The desperate call. The Council's last resort. The emergency session of the Galactic Harmony Council had been going on for 6 hours, and Ambassador Quilix was starting to lose what little patience his species possessed. The tall, reed-like alien swayed gently as he spoke, his voice carrying the musical quality that had made his people excellent diplomats for centuries. Honored colleagues, Quilix began, his translator rendering his melodic speech into standard galactic, we face an unprecedented crisis. The Nexarian Empire has already consumed 4 peaceful systems, and they show no signs of stopping. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species shifted uncomfortably. The crystalline collective hummed in harmonious distress, their geometric bodies reflecting the emergency lighting in prismatic patterns. The botanical assembly rustled their leaves with worry, releasing pheromones that spoke of deep concern. The database discovery. Senior Archivist Vornix, a slug-like being with an impressive memory capacity, slithered forward with his data pad. I have reviewed our military alliance options, he announced, his voice wet and precise. The Pacifist Union offers meditation circles. The Gentle Brotherhood suggests strongly worded protests. The Harmony Fleet, well, they're busy organizing a peace concert. A collective sigh rippled through the chamber. These were beings who had evolved beyond conflict, who had built their civilization on understanding and cooperation. Violence was not in their nature. Wait, Vornix continued, scrolling through his database. There is one more entry. It's marked with multiple warning flags. He paused, his eye stalks drooping with concern. The humans of Earth. The chamber fell silent. Even the usually chatty chirping collective stopped their constant musical commentary. The forbidden file. Humans? Asked Counselor Blixnorp, his tentacles curling with nervousness. Aren't they the ones from the quarantine zone? The ones who weaponized their own atmosphere? Quilix nodded grimly. The same species that turned music into psychological warfare and somehow made their water deadly to most carbon-based life forms. They call it carbonation. Vornix's voice dropped to a whisper. According to the classified reports, they once fought a war that lasted 4 years and involved their entire planet. They called it World War, and apparently, they had a sequel. The crystalline collective's harmonic frequency shifted to a minor key, expressing deep unease. The botanical assembly released stress pheromones that made several smaller species start hiccuping. The transmission. But surely, protested junior diplomat Flizek, his small frame trembling, they can't be that dangerous. I mean, they're probably quite reasonable if approached correctly. That's when the emergency alert chimed. The main screen flickered to life, showing the smoking remains of another peaceful mining colony. The Nexarian Empire had struck again, this time taking out an entire system in less than 3 hours. 50 million peaceful beings, Quilix announced, his voice breaking with emotion. Gone. Simply because they wouldn't surrender their resources. The chamber erupted in distressed sounds. Harmonious wailing, rhythmic sobbing, and the distinctive sound of the squeaking council expressing their ultimate disapproval. The decision. Ambassador Quilix stood tall, his decision made. I will contact the humans myself. If they are as dangerous as our reports suggest, perhaps they can understand and counter such violence. But the protocols, protested Vornix. The quarantine procedures. The liability waivers. The protocols didn't save 50 million lives today, Quilix replied firmly. Sometimes, when faced with monsters, you need to call upon other monsters. He activated the long-range communication system, its archaic human frequencies crackling to life. The other council members watched in horrified fascination as he prepared to make first contact with the galaxy's most feared species. The first contact. The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. Admiral Marcus Kane, according to the identification protocols, was a stern-faced man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much conflict. Behind him, they could see other humans moving with purpose through what appeared to be a military installation. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Force," the human said, his voice carrying an authority that made several council members instinctively step back. "I'm assuming this isn't a social call, considering you folks have been avoiding us for the past 2 decades. Quilix swallowed hard, his translator struggling with the human's direct manner of speaking. "Admiral Kane, I am Ambassador Quilix of the Galactic Harmony Council. We need help." The human's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he was already calculating possibilities. "What kind of help?" "The request. We're facing an aggressive species called the Nexarians," Quilix explained, his voice growing stronger despite his fear. "They've already destroyed multiple peaceful systems. Our usual diplomatic solutions have failed, and our military allies are." He paused, searching for the right words, philosophically opposed to effective violence. Admiral Kane was quiet for a long moment, and Quilix could hear other humans talking in the background. Finally, the human leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador, are you asking the human race to go to war for you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the chamber, the council members held their breath, suddenly realizing they were about to cross a line they had never imagined crossing. Quilix nodded slowly. "Yes, Admiral Kane. We are." The human smile was not particularly reassuring. "Well then, Ambassador, I think we can help you with that." The misunderstanding. The diplomatic chaos. General Victor Stone had dealt with complicated situations before, but nothing quite like this. The war room at Terran Command was buzzing with activity as dozens of analysts tried to make sense of the alien transmission. Captain Torres, his aide, approached with yet another stack of reports. "Sir, the linguistics team is having trouble with their communication protocols," Torres reported, her expression showing barely contained frustration. "Apparently, they have 17 different ways to say, 'Please consider our humble request,' but no direct word for 'attack.'" Stone rubbed his temples. "What about their military capabilities?" "That's the problem, sir. They don't seem to have any. Their idea of warfare is filing complaints in triplicate and organizing peaceful protests." The alien delegation. Meanwhile, Chancellor Bezek of the Galactic Harmony Council was experiencing his own frustrations. The portly, blue-skinned alien had been appointed as the primary liaison with the humans, a job he was beginning to regret accepting. His assistant, a nervous creature called Twixnop, scurried around him with various forms and documents. "Chancellor," Twixnop squeaked, "the humans have requested something called tactical intelligence. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds violent." Bezek sighed, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. "Everything about them sounds violent, Twixnop. Did you know they have over 300 words for different types of weapons? We have one word for conflict resolution, and it translates to group hug." The human approach. Back on Earth, General Stone was preparing for what he expected to be a straightforward military briefing. The humans had set up a secure communication channel and were ready to discuss strategy. What they weren't ready for was the alien approach to military planning. "Greetings, General Stone," Chancellor Bezek began, his image flickering on the main screen. "Before we discuss the unfortunate situation with the Nexarians, I must first present you with Form 247-B, the request for military assistance in triplicate, followed by Form 831-C, the ethical considerations of conflict resolution." Stone stared at the screen. "Chancellor, with respect, people are dying out there. We don't need forms, we need intelligence on enemy positions, fleet strength, and defensive capabilities." "Oh my," Bezek said, his eyes widening. "You want to know about their defensive capabilities? That seems rather aggressive. Are you sure we couldn't start with a strongly worded letter?" The cultural clash. Captain Torres leaned over to whisper to Stone. "Sir, I think they're serious about the letter." Stone nodded grimly. Chancellor Bezic, let me explain something. When humans go to war, we don't send letters. We send Marines. The alien delegation visible on screen seemed to have a collective nervous breakdown. Several smaller beings fainted, one started making a sound like a broken printer, and Chancellor Bezic's skin turned a shade of blue that their translator couldn't even identify. Marines? Bezic whispered. Are those your diplomatic specialists? In a way, Stone replied, allowing himself a small smile. They specialize in rapid problem resolution. The intelligence briefing. Despite the cultural differences, the aliens managed to provide some useful information. The Nexarians were a militaristic species that had conquered through overwhelming force and technological superiority. They had massive ships, energy weapons, and a complete disregard for civilian casualties. They've been expanding for 50 years, explained Ambassador Quilix, who had joined the briefing. Their standard procedure is to demand surrender, wait exactly 24 hours, then destroy everything that moves. Stone nodded, making notes. What about their fleet composition? Fleet composition? Quilix looked confused. They have big ships that shoot things. Is that helpful? Captain Torres stepped forward. Sir, perhaps I should handle the technical briefing? The shocking revelation. As the briefing continued, it became clear that the aliens had no concept of military strategy beyond ask nicely and hope for the best. They had never fought a war, never developed tactics, and their idea of intelligence gathering was asking politely if someone would mind sharing their plans. Let me understand this correctly, Stone said, his voice carefully controlled. You're telling me that in 3,000 years of galactic civilization, nobody has ever shot back? Well, Bezic said thoughtfully, there was the Great Disagreement of 2847, but that was resolved through interpretive dance and a potluck dinner. Stone looked at Torres, who was trying hard not to laugh. Captain, I think we're going to need to adjust our approach. The human solution. Chancellor, Stone said, his tone becoming more serious, I need you to understand something. Humans don't just have military capabilities, we have military instincts. We've been fighting wars for our entire evolutionary history. We've turned it into an art form. But surely, Bezic protested, there must be a peaceful solution. Perhaps we could offer them something they want. They want everything, Stone replied. They want your worlds, your resources, your people as slaves. That's not a negotiation, that's conquest. The aliens fell silent, the weight of their situation finally sinking in. The commitment. General Stone stood up, his decision made. Chancellor Bezic, Ambassador Quilix, I'm going to tell you something that might frighten you. Humans are very good at war. We've spent thousands of years perfecting it. We've made it efficient, devastating, and when necessary, merciful. Merciful? Quilix asked hopefully. We'll give the Nexarians one chance to withdraw peacefully, Stone explained. If they refuse, we'll show them why the galaxy quarantined us in the first place. The alien delegation exchanged nervous glances. General, Bezic said quietly, exactly how dangerous are humans? Stone's smile was neither kind nor reassuring. Chancellor, you're about to find out. The preparation. As the communication ended, Captain Torres turned to her commanding officer. Sir, what's our next move? Stone was already reaching for his secure communication device. Get me Admiral Kane, Colonel Mitchell, and Captain Harrison. Tell them we're going to war. And the aliens, sir? Tell them to stand back and watch. They're about to get a lesson in human-style conflict resolution. Outside, the first transport ships were already being prepared. The galaxy was about to discover why humanity had been left alone for so long, and why that might have been the wisest decision the Galactic Council had ever made. The age of gentle diplomacy was about to end, and the era of human intervention was about to begin. The human solution. The war room. Colonel James Mitchell stood before the largest holographic display in Terran Command, studying the three-dimensional map of Nexarian-controlled space. The grizzled Special Operations veteran had seen action on 4 different continents and 2 different moons, but this would be his first interstellar conflict. Engineer Rodriguez, what's our assessment of their technology? Mitchell asked, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had planned impossible missions before. Rodriguez, a compact woman with grease-stained fingers and sharp eyes, gestured to the hologram. Their ships are big, sir. Really big. They rely on massive energy shields and overwhelming firepower. But they're also predictable. Predictable how? They follow the same pattern every time. Jump in, demand surrender, wait exactly 24 hours, then commence bombardment. They've never faced an enemy that shoots back. The unconventional approach. Mitchell nodded, his mind already working through possibilities. What about their weaknesses? They have no point defense systems, reported Pilot Jackson, a lanky man with the kind of steady hands that made him perfect for dangerous flying. Their shields are designed to stop massive energy weapons, not small, fast-moving projectiles. Interesting, Mitchell mused. They're prepared for the kind of warfare the galaxy knows about. They're not prepared for the kind of warfare humans invented. Rodriguez grinned. Sir, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Depends. Are you thinking about turning their own size against them? Absolutely, sir. The Nexarian supremacy. Across the galaxy, Nexarian Warmaster Vorthak was reviewing his latest conquest reports. The massive, reptilian creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scales bearing the ritual scars of 100 victories. His ship, the Dominator, was the size of a small moon and had never tasted defeat. Subcommander Grix, Vorthak rumbled, his voice like grinding stone, what news from the forward scouts? The usual, Warmaster, replied the smaller Nexarian, his own scales showing the silver markings of junior rank. The weak ones are fleeing before us. Some have sent messages begging for mercy. Vorthak's laughter was like an avalanche. Mercy is for the conquered. What of their military response? Non-existent, as always. These civilized species have forgotten how to fight. They offer us their resources if we'll just leave them alone. The human preparation. Back at Terran Command, the planning session had moved to the practical phase. Colonel Mitchell was surrounded by the best tactical minds humanity had to offer, and they were doing what humans did best, finding creative ways to solve problems with violence. The key, Mitchell explained to his team, is that they've never faced guerrilla warfare. They expect big fleets meeting in open space, capital ships trading fire until one side surrenders. What they don't expect, added Engineer Rodriguez, is someone crazy enough to ram a ship full of explosives into their command vessel. That's suicide, objected Lieutenant Commander Wells, a naval officer who had joined the planning session. No, Mitchell replied calmly, that's human. The Trojan horse. The plan that emerged was both brilliant and terrifying. The humans would disguise their attack ships as refugee vessels, complete with distress signals and civilian markings. The Nexarians, following their standard procedure, would collect the refugees for processing and slavery. They'll bring us right into their ship, Jackson explained, his pilot's instincts already working out the details. Once we're inside, we detonate the charges and disable their main systems. And then, asked Wells. Then we introduce them to human boarding tactics, Mitchell replied. They've never fought an enemy in close quarters. The psychological warfare. Engineer Rodriguez had been working on something special, a psychological warfare package that would be transmitted during the initial contact. Sir, she reported, I've prepared what humans call a mixtape of our greatest military achievements. Videos from World War II, the Siege of Stalingrad, the Battle of Thermopylae, and some highlights from our various civil wars. The purpose? Mitchell asked. To let them know exactly what kind of species they're dealing with. The aliens were right about one thing: humans are very good at war. The Nexarians need to understand that. The final briefing. As the strike teams prepared for deployment, Colonel Mitchell gathered his officers for the final briefing. The room was filled with the cream of human military thinking: special forces operators, naval commanders, marine assault specialists, and combat engineers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mitchell began, "we're about to do something that has never been done in galactic history. We're going to teach a lesson about the difference between conquest and warfare. The Nexarians conquer through intimidation and overwhelming force," he continued. "They've never faced an enemy that fights back with intelligence, creativity, and sheer bloody-minded determination. The human advantage." "What advantages do we have?" asked Captain Reynolds, a Marine officer whose scarred face told the story of a dozen ground campaigns. "We have something they don't," Mitchell replied. "We have experience fighting enemies stronger than ourselves. We've been doing it for thousands of years. We know how to be the underdog. We also have something else," added Engineer Rodriguez. "We have the element of surprise. They've never seen human tactics before." "And what exactly are human tactics?" asked Wells. Mitchell's smile was predatory. "We cheat. We lie. We use their own weapons against them. We turn their strengths into weaknesses and their victories into defeats." The departure. As the disguised ships prepared to launch, Colonel Mitchell stood in the command center, watching his carefully laid plans come together. The Nexarians were expecting another easy conquest, another species to cow into submission. "Sir," reported Jackson over the comm, "all strike teams are ready for deployment. The refugee ships are launching now. Remember," Mitchell broadcast to all teams, "we're not just fighting for the aliens who asked for our help. We're fighting for every peaceful species in the galaxy. Today, we show them what happens when you threaten the innocent." The message. As the human ships jumped to hyperspace, a message was transmitted across all Nexarian communication channels. It was short, simple, and terrifying in its implications. "This is Colonel James Mitchell of the Terran Defense Force. You have been warned to withdraw from peaceful territories. You have ignored this warning. You are about to discover why the galaxy quarantined humanity. You are about to learn the difference between conquest and war." The message ended with footage of human military actions throughout history, accompanied by a sound that no species in the galaxy had ever heard before, the sound of 8 billion humans preparing for war. War Master Vorthak, watching the transmission, felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. These strange, hairless bipeds didn't cower or beg. They made threats. And somehow, those threats felt very real. The Nexarian supremacy was about to meet its first real challenge. The intervention. The calm before the storm. Captain Blake Harrison stood on the bridge of the TDF Vengeance, watching the Nexarian fleet through the main viewport. The massive enemy ships hung in space like dark mountains, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. His own ship, by comparison, was a fraction of their size. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Carter from the communication station, "we're receiving the standard Nexarian surrender demand." Harrison nodded grimly. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the intimidating figure of War Master Vorthak. The reptilian commander's voice boomed across the bridge: "Inferior species, you have entered space claimed by the Nexarian Empire. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation." "Sergeant Murphy," Harrison called to his Marine commander, "are our refugees in position?" "Aye, sir. Strike teams are aboard 3 of their ships. Colonel Mitchell's team is on the flagship." The deception revealed. Harrison activated the communication channel, his voice calm and measured. "War Master Vorthak, this is Captain Harrison of the Terran Defense Force. I'm here to offer you one last chance to withdraw peacefully." Vorthak's laughter was like grinding stone. "You dare threaten us? Your ship is smaller than our escape pods. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. You've conquered 1,000 worlds that didn't fight back, Harrison replied. That's about to change. At that moment, explosions erupted across the Nexarian fleet. The disguised refugee ships revealed their true nature as the charges detonated, crippling the massive vessel's shield generators and weapon systems. The human swarm. Now, Harrison ordered. From behind asteroids, gas clouds, and debris fields, the human fleet emerged. Unlike the massive Nexarian ships, the human vessels were small, fast, and numerous. They moved like a swarm of angry wasps, darting between the crippled giants. Sir, reported Lieutenant Carter, the Nexarians are trying to reform their battle line. Too late, Harrison replied. They're used to fighting other capital ships. They don't know how to handle a swarm attack. The human ships poured concentrated fire into the gaps created by the sabotage. Without their shields, the massive Nexarian vessels were vulnerable to even relatively small weapons. The boarding action. Inside the Nexarian flagship, Colonel Mitchell and his team were proving that humans were equally dangerous in close quarters. The Nexarians had never faced boarding parties before, their size and strength had always been enough to intimidate any potential enemies. Sir, reported Sergeant Williams over the comm, these corridors are huge. It's like fighting in a cathedral. Use it to our advantage, Mitchell replied, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. They're not used to fighting in their own ships. The human troops moved through the vessel like shadows, using their knowledge of military tactics to outmaneuver the confused Nexarians. Every corridor became a trap, every junction a killing field. The psychological impact. War Master Vorthak watched in horror as his invincible fleet was torn apart by creatures he had dismissed as inferior. The humans fought with a viciousness and creativity that defied his understanding of warfare. Sub-Commander Grix, he bellowed, how are they doing this? I don't know, War Master, Grix replied, his voice trembling with fear. They're using our own ship against us. They've turned our corridors into death traps. On the bridge screens, Vorthak could see human soldiers moving through his ship with practiced efficiency. They weren't panicking or running, they were hunting. The innovation. Lieutenant Carter looked up from her station with barely contained excitement. Sir, Engineer Rodriguez's modification is working perfectly. The Nexarians can't track our ships. Harrison nodded. The humans had modified their vessels with a simple but effective camouflage system. They mimicked the electromagnetic signatures of debris and asteroids. The Nexarian sensors, designed to track large military vessels, couldn't distinguish between human ships and space junk. It's like fighting ghosts, Sergeant Murphy observed, watching the tactical display. They can't hit what they can't see. The turning point. The battle reached its climax when Colonel Mitchell's team reached the flagship's command center. The massive chamber was filled with Nexarian officers, all scrambling to understand how their perfect record of conquest had been shattered. War Master Vorthak, Mitchell announced, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber, I'm Colonel Mitchell of the Terran Defense Force. You're under arrest for war crimes. Vorthak, despite his size and strength, found himself backing away from the much smaller human. There was something in Mitchell's eyes that spoke of a warrior who had seen too much combat to be intimidated by mere physical size. You cannot defeat us, Vorthak snarled. We are the masters of this galaxy. Were, Mitchell corrected. Past tense. The surrender. The battle ended not with a massive explosion or dramatic gesture, but with a simple communication from the Nexarian flagship. War Master Vorthak's voice, no longer booming with confidence, filled the communication channels. This is War Master Vorthak of the Nexarian Empire. I surrender. The words hung in space like a death knell. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no one had ever made a Nexarian surrender. The concept didn't exist in their language. Captain Harrison opened a channel to the entire fleet. All Nexarian vessels, this is Captain Harrison. You will withdraw from all occupied territories immediately. Your war crimes will be reported to the Galactic Council. Any attempt to continue your conquest will result in the full military response of the Terran Defense Force. The aftermath. As the human fleet regrouped, the scope of their victory became clear. The Nexarian Empire, which had seemed invincible just hours before, was retreating from every system they had conquered. Their reputation for invincibility was shattered. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Carter, "we're receiving communications from across the galaxy. The peaceful species are emerging from hiding." Harrison nodded. "Send a message to Admiral Kane. Tell him the Nexarian threat has been neutralized. And the aliens who asked for our help? Tell them," Harrison said, allowing himself a small smile, "that humanity keeps its promises." The new reality. As the human ships prepared to return home, the galaxy was already changing. The news of the Nexarian defeat spread faster than light, carried by quantum communicators and hyperspace relays. For the first time in galactic history, the bullies had been stopped. "Sir," asked Sergeant Murphy, "what happens now?" Harrison looked out at the stars, considering the question. "Now, Sergeant, the galaxy learns that peaceful doesn't mean helpless. And that sometimes, the best way to preserve peace is to be very, very good at war." The intervention was over, but the implications would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. Humanity had announced its presence not with diplomacy or trade, but with the oldest language in the universe, the application of superior force in defense of the innocent. The age of Nexarian supremacy was over. The age of human protection had begun.